Hello, Changemakers. Welcome to our final episode of the Environmental Changemaker series. Today we have a very special episode featuring Ella and Amy Meek, founders of Kids Against Plastic. After we learned from these incredible sisters, we're once again joined by activist and STEM educator extraordinaire Elly Savatia for a very special panel of Changemakers. I am Adriana Glazner, co-founder of Environmental Scouts. I'm joined, as always, by our young co-founder and inspiration, 10-year-old Brooke. Brooke's idea for an environmental club for kids has grown into this amazing opportunity to connect individual change makers and nonprofit organizations to share all of our very best educational resources for an amplified impact. We've proudly brought you the Environmental Changemaker series as a giant first step to achieving that goal. We hope that our series has inspired you to take action. Like we learned from Elly earlier this week, it's all of the small things. And I know he'll tell us more about that in a little bit. Please like this video and subscribe below. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Environmental Scouts and on Instagram at EnviroScoutsLA. First, we're going to hear from Amy and Ella Meek. These 15 and 17-year-old sisters are the founders of Kids Against Plastic. Their campaign originally started when they saw the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They did a TED Talk 2 years ago at the young ages of, 13 and 15? Is my math correct there? And they've done many campaigns to make restaurants, schools, businesses, and events change the way that they do business. They're an example of how young people can take a stand and make a change. You can find them on Instagram at Kids Against Plastic. So we'll hear from them first, and then we'll come back around and get to know more about our good friend Elly. Brooke, do you have any words to start us off today? Anything that you're particularly excited about for this episode?
Yes, I'm just really thankful for everyone and all the organizations that took part in our Changemaker series. All environmental issues are connected, and that's what we've been trying to show in this series. This is so important to me because most people can't relate or don't experience these problems. Young people need this knowledge, and once they have it, they are empowered to take action, which is what Elly said on the Heirs to Our Ocean episode.
Absolutely. If you can't already tell, Elly, we're very inspired by your work. So we will come back around to him in just a little bit. Amy and Ella, we are so honored that you've joined us halfway across the world from where we are. And we're just ready for you to take it away and teach us all about your organization and the work that you've done so that we can inspire young people just like you to take action.
Thank you so much for the intro and for allowing us to speak. We're really excited to be here today and to be able to talk a bit about our charity, just how we got started in our work, and also why we believe that the youth voice is one of, I think, the most powerful things in the world.
Yeah, and that final point about the youth voice is something that if we said 4.5 years ago, when we first started our charity, it seems so long ago now, I think it would have been a very surprising statement for us to make. But we've seen now more than ever the difference that young people can make and the impact that they can have.
Yeah, and I think the name Greta Thunberg is probably pretty familiar to everyone who is listening right now. And in the last few years, we've seen more than 1 million students take part to protest government inaction on climate change as part of her Fridays for the Future strikes. And here in the UK alone, it's estimated that around 300,000 young people have been taking part in these strikes. And this is something that we've seen reflected around the world as well, with more than 2,000 protests taking part in over 125 countries around the world in just one day of striking.
Now, if you'd said 4.5 years ago when we first founded our charity that many people were taking action against environmental issues, it would have really blown us away. We might not have believed you. But I think that now there was a there's more knowledge, and back then there was not really much at all on these environmental issues. So that's what made us actually first start our activism journey, the lack of knowledge out there on these issues that really needed to be heard about.
Yeah, and Kids Against Plastic began in February 2016, and at the time we were traveling around Europe in a motorhome, and as you'll see from the next slide, or the slide afterwards, maybe, I think we missed one, whoops. We were studying something called the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And it was through these that we came across single-use plastics and really the devastating impact that disposable plastics are having on the planet.
We saw sea mammals dying from bellyfuls of plastic, as you'll see in the next slide, and their stomachs bursting full of these plastic items that their parents had accidentally picked up and fed to them. And we were completely shocked by this. And we found out that this wonder material of plastic isn't actually as wonderful as people think, as its properties don't match its function.
But what really struck us in particular before we studied with this topic was that we ourselves had literally no idea of the devastating environmental impact that plastic is having. Now, this was in 2016, so this was a couple of years before the massive media explosion around plastics took place, and it's become such a hot topic. And we were really shocked by what we found, and we realised that most other ordinary people, just like ourselves, would similarly have no idea of the disastrous impact that their plastic habits were having on the planet. And this was shocking to us, and we decided that we needed to take action ourselves against this.
So that's actually exactly what we did. And our aim was to really help people cut down on their use of single-use plastic and become more discerning users of it, as well as helping young people believe that they can also have an impact on environmental issues that they feel passionate about, just like we did.
Now, to begin with, we started off by just litter picking, and we're pretty sure that this photo on the right is our first ever litter pick as part of Kids Against Plastic. And the reason we started off litter picking was because, as I'm sure many of you listening will know, when you're faced with a huge environmental issue like plastic pollution, it can be really hard to find a place to get started. And so for us, litter picking was something that we could do straight off the bat. Just all we had to do was grab a litter picker and a bag, and we were off.
And we actually set ourselves the goal of picking up 100,000 pieces of plastic. And we chose that number because that's the amount of sea mammals that are killed by plastic in the ocean every year. So we started picking up the litter 4.5 years ago to get to that goal. And now, this many years on, we are on around 77,000 pieces. So fingers crossed we will get there soon.
But what litter picking really did was open our eyes to our consumption of plastic in particular. Now, we'd returned to a place that we'd been collecting litter just maybe a week later, and the litter that we'd picked up would already have been replaced. Now, these photos were an example of this. I took the photo that is on the right about a weekend or two ago, and we'd been to this lay-by for a weekend litter pick just a couple of days before, and we picked up 1,223 pieces of plastic. And then in just a few days, when we came back, it had already been littered once again, and it was now even marked as an environmental crime scene. Now, a friend of ours, a professor at Plymouth University, has a really good analogy for this. Now, if plastic pollution were an overflowing bathtub, the solution wouldn't be to just mop up all the spilling water as it flows over the edges. The solution would be to turn off the tap. And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to cut our plastic consumption at the source, and we need to turn off the plastic tap.
So that's when we decided that we'd take on UK supermarkets. And I think saying that we were naive when we first founded Kids Against Plastic might be an understatement, because at the age of 10 and 12 years old, we approached all the UK supermarkets and asked them if they could take plastic bottles off their shelves. And I think, unsurprisingly, it didn't exactly go as planned, but we tried, and I think that's what matters.
Yeah, and plastic bottles in particular are a real bugbear of ours. I think that's a bit of an understatement, really. But here in the UK, plastic bottled water is completely unnecessary. Now, our tap water is completely safe to drink, so plastic bottles of water here are a prime example of manufactured demand. And we were really shocked by how misleading plastic bottles are with regards to their eco-credentials, especially around recycling. Now, most plastic bottles are branded with the logo that you'll see on screen, which says that they're fully recyclable, which often leads you to think that when you put them in the recycling bin, they'll get made into a new plastic bottle, because, you'd think this was common sense. But really, here in the UK anyway, this is definitely not the case. Now, we have a ridiculously ineffective recycling system in the first place, which means that you can put one type of plastic item in the bin in one city, but then you can go to another and you can't recycle it there. And in the case of plastic bottles, even when you can put them in the recycling bin, they are often downcycled and instead of being recycled into new ones. Now, downcycling is making an item like a plastic bottle into one of less worth than it was before. So, for example, a carpet or a fleece. And that might sound like a really great solution because, my old plastic bottle is being made into something that I can wear, or a carpet I can put in my home. It sounds pretty cool, right? But really, this is actually far from that. Downcycling items actually means that often they become emitters of microfibers, which are a really prolific form of plastic pollution. And also, this downcycling still means that more plastic is needed to be made just to replace the items that were used the day before.
And the only time that recycling plastic actually becomes close to being a solution is when it's a closed loop. So plastic bottles actually become new plastic bottles. And this is pretty rare in the UK, because when we approached plastic bottled water companies all those years ago when we first founded our campaign, we asked them how much recycled plastic they put back into their bottles. And all of them replied with 0%, apart from one. So that just showed how much of a red herring this idea of fully recycling a plastic bottle was. And we saw how shocking this was, because we didn't know it at the time. And people who were putting their plastic bottle in the recycling bin thinking they were being eco-conscious and doing the right thing were actually being misled. So we wanted the supermarkets to completely stop selling the plastic bottles, like we mentioned. And yeah, we didn't get there, basically. And we referred to loads of different customer service branches and loads of different people, and all of them said that basically it couldn't really happen at that point, because we were just two young enthusiastic girls who went in saying, oh, can you stop selling all your plastic bottles of water? So it didn't exactly go as planned. But that's when we founded our Plastic Clever initiative, as you can see on the screen. And this is basically a simpler version of plastic free. So it's cutting out 4 main items in particular from your life, which are also on the screen. They're plastic bags, cups and lids, straws and bottles. And these are really easy to replace with reusables, and it can actually make a bigger difference than you might think.
And the reason that we went from addressing supermarkets and getting pushed back with their attitudes to plastic bottled water was that we saw that really a lot of these large companies and supermarkets are driven by consumer demand, and it's our changes that really make them listen, just a simple changes to our lifestyles. And the idea of Plastic Clever is really simple and achievable, and as you can see on screen, it's applicable to all sectors, be it schools or cafes or festivals. Anywhere that has an unnecessary usage of single-use plastic can become Plastic Clever, using the resources and the criteria that we put together.
So we actually started by approaching cafes, and we went down our high street asking the cafes to become plastic free, plastic clever, and we went in with our clipboards showing loads of enthusiasm, and it actually went really well, with one of our cafes on the high street actually saying that the Plastic Clever scheme helped them save money because they weren't having to buy loads of single-use items and then have to get a new batch of them. Instead, they could use reusables and just watch them and not have to buy more. So this was really great news.
And so because of this, we moved on to starting our Plastic Clever Businesses Initiative, which you can see on screen now. And this is what we developed next. And it encourages businesses to do really the similar thing. So to get employees to have their coffees in reusable items and to supply free tap water instead of just selling plastic bottles. And it's really important for a business to be environmentally conscious behind the scenes instead of just through their product or service. And also, it's actually a simpler place to start, which is a bonus.
The next thing we moved on to doing was the Plastic Clever schools. And this is specifically aimed at students and the school itself. And it's about encouraging students to bring in reusable bottles instead of buying single-use plastic bottles at school, and bringing in wooden or metal cutlery in their lunch boxes. Just simple things that can help reduce the school's use of plastic overall. And this can actually, the aim was easily achievable by the kids, which is something that we really thought was important. And it's quite simple to implement in the school, and so that eco teams can do it with collaboration with their teachers. And our school is actually well on the way to becoming Plastic Clever as well. And we also have over 900 schools signed up to the scheme around the UK.
Now, our advice to people that want to do something to try and tackle single-use plastic is never to try and go completely plastic-free, because this is really time-consuming and it's even practically impossible for most people, including ourselves, and we are campaigners against single-use plastic. So we always encourage people to instead just to start small and do something manageable, because if you start making a difference, every small thing adds up to have a really big impact.
Now, all of the stuff that we've mentioned so far was really interesting as part of our steps to learning about activism. But actually, it isn't the litter picking or working with businesses and helping them become plastic clever that was the most amazing part of campaigning for us. The most interesting part was actually working with young people.
Now, we'll go back to what we said at the start, which is that our belief is that the youth voice is one of the most important and influential things on the planet. It has the power to make a huge positive difference. And this is something that we really believe and have certainly seen evidence for over the years.
After all, the rise in the number of people, especially young people, who are taking action on these issues isn't just because we're trying to cause mischief or trying to stir the pot a bit. It's because we just care. We care about the planet that we live on and share with other living species.
And as you'll know, when you care about something, you want to do all that you can in your power to protect it.
And when us as young people don't have full faith in the adults that are around us saying that they will do it for us, we want to take action ourselves.
And we'll take action into our own hands. But getting started in activism can be really hard, because these are some really big issues that we're facing in the world that are hard to tackle. So it can be really difficult to know where to start and to also have the confidence to. And that's why the next phases of our work through Kids Against Plastic is focused in particular on the kids part of our name, getting more young people empowered and equipped to be young activists themselves, no matter what the issue is that they're passionate about tackling. Now, just last Wednesday, it was International Youth Day, so we thought that this was the perfect time to launch a couple of new initiatives that we've been busy working on during lockdown.
Now, we already have a team of around 50 kids who were on the previous slide, who are part of our Plastic Clever team. And these young people have all done something really inspiring at their age, which is something like litter picking in their local area many times, making cafes or their school become plastic clever, spreading the word, cutting out plastic from their lives. I think there are some really inspiring kids on there. And so recently I've started to try and work with these kids more to make a reward scheme to really help them expand on their activism. So these are simple things like litter picking, and there's different areas just to help them build on their skills, and hopefully for when they are a bit older, they can go on to do lots more activism on things that they're passionate about.
So that's the Kids Against Plastic Club. And the other project that we've been working on during lockdown is actually on the previous slide again, but that is the Youth Empowerment Scheme, nicknamed YES, because we like to be positive. And it's aimed at a slightly older age range to the Kids Against Plastic Club, and it's aimed particularly at teenagers around our age. And the aim of the Youth Empowerment Scheme is to develop young people's skills and abilities in order to help them become agents of positive change, so engaged in the world that they live in and active to try and help improve it. Now, as part of the empowerment scheme, I'm developing an award scheme in particular, which is called the Youth Empowerment Award. And it has 3 levels, which are all about developing key areas of being a young activist, particularly skills that we've found useful over the years through our charity, such as public speaking or writing for an audience or presenting to camera. And I'm also hoping to develop a program to help implement this in schools too. As so often these key skills for life, such as how to deliver a talk, are really brushed to the side in the school curriculum in order to make room for time on exam work. And this is a real shame, as these abilities and these confidences developed through youth activism really set young people up for life, whilst also linking really closely to the school curriculum. Now, we're going into the pilot phase with the Bronze Award of the Youth Empowerment Award in the next few weeks, which is super exciting. And if anyone listening now wanted to get involved and to be part of the pilot, then please feel free to get in touch.
And on the note of things that you can do, we always like to end talks with a call to action and things that you can do. So number one, we'd say be plastic clever, of course, and that's reduce your use of the big four plastic polluters in particular, which are single-use cups and lids, straws, bottles, and bags.
Number two would to be try and get your school to become more plastic clever and get more young people involved in tackling plastic too. Now, we've got information on how you can do this on our website, or you can just email us. And we really think that it's important to get the youth involved in these environmental issues, and we think that schools are a great way to do this.
Number three, be conscious of the amount of microfibers that you release through your clothes, because these are the tiny pieces of plastic that are weaved into your clothing from downcycling of bottles like we mentioned earlier. So the tips that we'd give is to wear your clothes for longer, do bigger washes, or use a filter bag, or simply buy clothes that are made from more natural materials like cotton.
And finally, number four would just be to not underestimate your voice, because we as young people are so often told to sit down or be quiet, but actually when we take action for something that we believe in, we can have the loudest voices and we can make a really big positive impact. So thank you for listening to us.
Thank you so much, Amy and Ella. That was amazing. We're so obviously impressed with your skill and the way that you bring to life the traits that you said you want to see in other people. As an educator, I'm particularly inspired by the YES acronym and the new campaign, helping students understand what they can begin to do, not just to actually change the world, but to become more equipped to do that. And so we're just so thankful. I know we have a couple of questions for you before we hear from Elly. You mentioned in terms of supermarkets. I know that's kind of where your campaign started a long time ago, and how supermarkets are driven by consumer demand. So along that line, what should our viewers be demanding? What should they consider saying no to no longer buying, to no longer doing?
Well, I think we'd like to say that plastic is a really amazing material. It's durable, it's good for lots of items, but sometimes it isn't matched with the purpose. So I'd say items like plastic bottles of water, it's unnecessary, and so are straws. So just some of these items really you don't need as much. So really try and cut out those items, because they can be thrown away in 15 minutes yet last forever. So I'd say really be careful with the usage of these items in particular, and they're the ones that we should try and get supermarkets to start cutting out through consumer demand.
And I also think that we often really underestimate the impact that just not buying something like a plastic bottle can have. Often we think that in order to make a big change, we all need to take big steps, like, starting a petition to supermarkets or starting a campaign or doing something really big. But actually, as consumers, we can really vote with our wallets and with our money. And supermarkets are driven by the purchases that we make. So by just cutting down your use of the items that we talk about in Plastic Clever, and like Ella mentioned, cups and lids, straws, bottles and bags are the key items we target. And actually just starting by stopping using those items can have a really big difference in the long run.
Great. What is your advice for sort of the sneaky way that companies, I'll say, force materials on us that we don't want? Let me give you an example. So I ordered something through the mail, and it came in sort of a paper cardboard type envelope. And my 5-year-old ripped it open out of excitement. And as she ripped it, between the layers of brown paper, it was lined with styrofoam. So to me, and of course I was like, ugh, right? To me, that's something that I felt like I didn't have a choice in. I can't just stop buying from that company. But that seems to me like something that might require a petition or a letter, right? Because I don't have any say in the kind of packaging that they use when I'm making my purchases. So what is your advice about that kind of thing, with something that kind of sneaks up on you that you felt like you didn't have a choice in?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And, we still get caught off guard. You often order online and you think, you'd assume that you wouldn't need an absolute ton of packaging in order to just send you one little book or something. But, often we are caught off guard by things like that. And I think even like you said, by getting in touch with the companies or starting a petition is a really good way to do it. And even especially with supermarkets, during lockdown, I know that a lot of people here in the UK especially have been getting stuff delivered from the supermarkets to their home. And we've seen quite a few stories online of people who have just emailed their local branch and asked them to not bring it in plastic bags, or have actually kicked up a fuss on social media as well and got the supermarket's attention. I think they're really good ways to do it, as well as, if there's a company that in particular uses a lot of packaging, just trying to buy from them less or buy more things together so that they're not sent in loads of packaging is another simple thing to do. But I think it is a really tricky situation, and I don't think there's one sort of good answer to how we can completely avoid that. But I think those are some kind of simple ways that could be a good way to reduce the amount of unnecessary packaging you get.
Absolutely. And we appreciate your focus that you've taken over the past, few years on youth education. To that end, I also want to bring Elly Savatia into the conversation and give him a chance to present to us so that we can have a discussion all together at the end. So we're going to transition now to hearing from Elly, who you met as one of our Heirs to Our Oceans youth leaders on Wednesday. Elly lives in Kenya, Nairobi, right, Elly?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He is a STEM mentor, a youth leader, like I said, in the H2OO organization. He's designed robotics to clean up ocean pollutants, and he's a speaker and a leader to empower youth. We're just so excited to hear from him. If you want more information about Elly, you can find him on Instagram at Elly Savatia. And again, the organization that first introduced us to Elly on Instagram at Heirs to Our Oceans. So Elly, you're up. We can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for introduction. And also I would love to express my gratitude to the Environmental Changemaker Movement, Brooke, and the whole team for the good work they're doing, and also for the invitation. And I enjoyed Emmy and Ella's work, listening to the good work that you're doing. Yeah, so I delve into introducing myself. Thank you. My name is Elly Savatia. I'm a 19-year-old change maker from Kenya. I work around the SDGs. I am a tech optimist, and I just see myself in a position where I want to make change and empower other young people in positions they can as well take when it comes to making change. I'm also the founder of Innovate for SDGs, and I am affiliated to Heirs to Our Oceans, the special ops program that happened this year. So specific to this presentation, I'm going to talk about a project that I worked together with my team in the course of last year. I was taking part in the 2019 First Global Robotics Challenge, and it brings together youth from around the world to tackle among the world's most pressing problems using robotics and technology. So we were presented with the theme Ocean Opportunities, and as we are aware, every year we get millions of tons of pollutants generated from human activity, from the factories, from the industries, and even from the homes. And they make their way into the lungs of this planet, the oceans. And this is in turn negatively affecting marine life and global populations at large. So this challenge brought attention to the critical issue of climate action specific to ocean pollution. And it brought us together to learn and also educate ourselves about taking action to preserve the oceans and wildlife. And teams which took part in this activity, we were solving a real life challenge: ocean pollution. Yeah. So together with my team, we worked on building a robot, and we're just going to play this video of the introduction of the work that we were doing and listen to what we had to say then.
STEM is important to me because the world is changing, and to embrace these changes and come up with solutions to the problems, one needs to have acquired STEM skills.
Participating in the first global challenge has helped me to grow my technical skills, since building the robots has required me to learn quite a number of new technologies.
So I'd love to encourage young people, especially girls, to take part in more technological activities.
This year's theme is important to me and my country because it will enable us to realize the impact of ocean pollution, and also realize that there's ways to use technology to solve environmental problems.
So by us helping clear the oceans and also raising awareness of ocean pollutants and everything that is related to them, then we help Kenya become a better country. And not only Kenya, but the world at large, which mostly relies on the ocean.
Yeah, so that was my team, and this was team effort building the robot to tackle ocean pollution. This was when the robotics kit was shipped to Kenya, and we were just playing around to learn about like what materials do you have inside. Yeah, and here we were trying to prototype and play around with the resources that had been donated to us, just trying to build prototypes about the robot. As we move forward, 2 months later, it took us around 2 months to work on this robot. And what I learned from this experience was prototyping and just going outside the classroom experience. We came to learn that we live in a generation where not only what is being tested in the exams happens to be that important. And this is just but an example of having young people to integrate their thoughts and their skills to solve a real life problem. In this case, we have climate action. And we not only have climate action, we have many social, many economic problems that the current world of today is facing. And in the last time when we were talking about the SDGs, we are living in a period where as young people, we have to take action to the problems that we face in our communities. And the greatest advantage that we have is that we are in a position to shape it and actively design the kind of future that we want for ourselves, even as we advance in our works and everything. Yeah, so right now, this is my team, and I would love to credit all the work of building the ocean to teamwork. And talking about education and the 21st century skills, from collaboration, critical thinking, what else? Creativity, and bringing all these ideas to life. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, so this is WEMA, and we built WEMA specifically to tackle ocean pollution. How? So we are aware of the huge amount of plastic that is there in the oceans and even in our waterways. And so the idea was to design a robot that could pick pollutants. As you can see from the two pictures, one was taken at night, one in the daytime. And the idea was to have the robot pick up pollutants, and after picking up the pollutants, it can go and dispose this waste in recycling hubs. So it is just like a demo of a real life situation, trying to depict what would happen in a real life situation. Currently, we are trying to see of how we can advance and make more progress to this project, and see how we can actually roll it out to be a meaningful product that is going to impact the oceans and the waterways in future. Yeah, this is just some of the work that I have been doing. Besides from this, I am also advancing for the SDGs and mobilizing young change makers in Kenya and Nigeria. And to me, it's usually really inspiring seeing young people, the likes of Brooke, the likes of Emmy and Ella, taking action and not really waiting for being told. I mean, it's really inspiring, and that's the kind of world and future that I look forward to by 2030 moving forward. Thank you.
Elly, thank you so much. I know you said you're inspired by the people around you and the young people that you see here. Who inspired you to begin this work? How does a young man like you become interested in using robotics to solve a real world problem?
Wow. I have grown up a curious teenager, and I just grew up literally wanting to know what happens behind this laptop. So I would break apart and just want to know, okay, what really is behind this. And once I came to learn about innovation and knowing that I can use these skills to the betterment of my community, that was when I started taking part in science fairs and putting myself in spaces and communities which I can get the resources and opportunities to advance change making.
And speaking of resources and opportunities, what kind of support or collaboration, what resources, what opportunities are you looking for right now to see your Wema, your robot, to see it actually go from sort of a prototype to something more? What resources are needed?
Okay, I had a slight delay with my internet, but it's okay.
Did you hear the question, or should I repeat it for you?
Kindly come again.
Yes. So you mentioned resources and support, putting yourself in those spaces. So to see your current project, to see Wema, am I saying that correctly, the robot?
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase. What resources and collaboration do you need to see that robot go from a prototype to something more?
That will be potential link ups to accelerators, incubators, and also partnerships and partners, different stakeholders where we can collaborate. Yeah, because through collaboration we can really pull a lot of strings and make progress in whatever work that we are doing.
Absolutely. And so this is sort of to all of the four young people in front of me. You've all mentioned helping young people believe that they can have an impact, right? And Amy and Ella, you talked about your example of starting with litter picking. And Elly, you've talked about, being inspired to innovate and take things apart. These are small ways that we can get started. What do you say out there to young people who aren't sure if they have what it takes to have an impact the way that you have?
Okay.
Well, I'd say to people, if you find something that you're really passionate about and you just believe in yourself, then you really can make a change, even if the issue seems really huge and maybe too daunting. You can still make a difference, because every single step that you make, no matter how small or big it is, does really count. Because say you were trying to tackle plastic pollution like we were, if you think that just cutting out one item from your life will make a difference, if everyone did that, then we might stop using that item as altogether. So you really can make a difference, even if you might not feel like you are. So just definitely believe in yourself and find something that you're really passionate about. So no matter how disheartened you might feel about the issue being so big, you'll know that you want to carry on because you're really passionate about it.
Yeah, and I think every young person in the world has the potential to have a really big impact, and anyone who tells you otherwise, isn't being truthful. I think every young person has the potential to have a really big difference, and it's just about having that belief and that passion, because so many of the big changes that we see happening in the world just start from those simple changes, those small actions that we often really underestimate, but which together can have such a huge impact.
Brooke, I think you're muted, sweetie.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Speaking of small changes that kids can make, do you know what the bills AB 1080 and SB 54 are? Have you heard of those?
No.
I think those are specific to our part of the world. Brooke, why don't you tell them about it?
So those bills, if they're passed, they can reduce all single-use plastic by 2030, which is 10 years. And it was created a year ago, but it hasn't been passed. And if it's not passed by the end of this month, it can't be passed anymore. So I was really inspired by one of the people who spoke with Heirs to Our Oceans 2 days ago. His name is Dominion. He called, and he's from Nigeria. He called California and said, please pass this bill. And I was really inspired by that. So I called yesterday. I called our assemblywoman, Miss Fieldman, and she actually answered. I was expecting to leave a message, but she actually answered. And I told her, can you please pass this bill? I told her why it was important to me. And she said, well, actually, I'm one of the co-authors of the bill AB 1080. So she said, of course I'm going to support it, because it's partly my bill. So I was like, whoa, that's really cool. I just thought it was a good experience.
I'm so glad you did that, Brooke.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. And, that just shows, imagine if so many other young people just, picked up the phone and just called up and said, hey, look, what are you doing about this bill? And I think that, together our voices can make a really big change. And, we have similar frustrations here in the UK. Like there was meant to be a ban come in on plastic straws in stirrers earlier this year, which was going to be a really good change to see happening. And then because of coronavirus, it got pushed back until later this year or next year. And especially with the large plastics corporations like the British Plastics Federations really putting pressure on keeping our use of plastic, keeping a large use of plastic really. And I think, we just need to make sure that we do oppose these things, that we don't just let them slide and think, because we're young people, I can't really make a difference on that. And, exactly like you did, that's so inspiring to hear, because just think about what an impact that would have if loads of young people did that as well.
Absolutely. And that's just one city in one state in one country. Imagine all of the lawmakers out there just waiting to hear from kids like you, Brooke. So that's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's so inspiring, and seeing a teenager taking responsibility. I mean, if we don't take responsibility, no one else will do that for us. And that was really profound, and we're looking forward to that being passed soon.
Great. So I learned lots of new things today. I'll tell you about one of them in particular in just a moment. But what is something that each of you learned this year that you maybe didn't know before? I know that's a big question. Take your time.
I think something that we learned in particular, I think there's a couple of things that we've learned, especially from coronavirus, because, it's a really awful situation that we're in globally, and it's had such a horrible impact on people. And I think it's easy to see it as something that, is just going to stop any positive work from happening. But I think what we really learned was to use this time for something productive and positive. And, we spent a lot of the time we were sat at home in lockdown working on the new initiatives that we were launching as well. So I think we really learned, it's kind of less of an obvious thing to have learned, but I think we learned to make the best of a situation that we were in and try and keep positive and keep taking action. And that I think really helped keep us going during this time, and also come out of it with something really positive and really good to launch in the future.
Yeah, I think also we've noticed how strong the activism community is, because even in times like these, the amount of Zoom calls and conferences that have been happening has been incredible, and we've got to meet so many more young activists from around the world because of things like Zoom and being connected online, even in times like these. And there's been so much support around each other, even on completely issues that might not seem related, but really you can find links between all of these issues. So yeah, having that support network almost of other young activists around the world, sharing their struggles in times like these, and also giving advice on how you can really keep on making a difference, has been very inspiring.
I do have a few questions, because I have some challenges in my community that I hope to learn to handle. And one, I just wish public schools would provide education about environmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
So first question is, how do you change people's mindset? Because a lot of people don't think that there are any problems and that they live in a perfect world. So how do you...
So I'm gonna have Elly answer first, because Elly, I want you to tell me what you learned this year, and then also what's your advice for changing mindset.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke and Adriana, for that question. One of the things that really stood out the most for me during this pandemic and the developments of COVID this period was that I recently took part in virtual summit, the Heirs to Our Oceans Summit for Empowerment and Leadership Special Ops. And it was, I never really knew of such a vibrant, young people from each corner of the world coming together and just exploring the Zoom capabilities. What I have learned is that we are kind of interconnected, and the issues that we face here and what dominion the speaker was talking about. The plastic that is being polluted in California is ending up in Nigeria, and he ends up speaking to the policymakers over there. So I just learned of this interconnection and the importance of working together, and just that oneness. And to the question that has been addressed, can you come again, please, to that question, Candy?
Brooke, you were asking about changing people's hearts and minds, right?
Yeah. And I still have another question. It's the last one. It's, how do you address climate denial?
She's bringing the heat, guys.
Okay, to the first question. Yeah, how do we change people's mindsets? One of the things that I like specifically to the youth, I have worked with the youth, and I kind of like tend to see how you package information really matters. How I would package my message for the millennials, and how I would package that information for another group of persons, depending on their ages, would really I would really need to put a lot of emphasis and just try to put it more creative and also make it fun. Like if you want to engage young people, try to make that information fun in some way that they can just find themselves being engaged.
Great advice.
Definitely. I think that we'd agree with that. And I think exactly as Elly said, we always try and be really positive with our messaging. We never try and, say, oh, it's completely your fault that, you're using loads of plastic and it's so awful. Or, even with climate denial, I think that a lot of people who do deny climate change, it's almost because of fear, because I think that this is a really scary issue. And in a way, it's sort of easier to bury your head in the sand than it is to kind of think, what can I do to address this? So I think really staying positive with education, I think education is also really important. So keeping that positive messaging and keeping, awareness high about this as well. I think you're never going to convince everyone, and don't let that put you down, because you're always going to get people that will deny climate change or will just completely ignore everything that you're saying. But that's fine. And actually, if more even if one person walks away from a talk that you're doing and decides to change their attitudes, that is a win, and that's a really positive difference to have made as well.
Yeah. And about changing mindsets, I think we mentioned, educating people about these issues will help them become more engaged, because if you don't know about an issue, you can't care about it and feel passionate enough about it to really make a difference. So with shifting mindsets, if people really find out about these issues and realize how big of these issues they are, they will want to make more of a difference and shift their mindset, because they realize how huge all of these problems are and how we all need to be taking action. And I think if they realize that and they see for themselves the problems that are happening in the world, then that will hopefully make them want to change their mindsets as well.
Also extending opportunities and trying to put them in a way they can see problems as not challenges, as opportunities. Yeah, there's a way you can educate them and just put this message outside. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love what Ami and Ella have been talking about, the message. And I would actually reference it to what they were doing with the supermarkets, and also the no plastic work that they're doing in UK.
Thank you so much for joining us, and just thanks.
Absolutely. I think all of you are such an amazing example of the spirit behind this Changemaker series. If I can just say for a moment, our dream is really that the audience is inspired both by the vastness of the climate and environmental crisis we're facing, but also by the impact of those small things that they can do to solve it. So rather than, being overwhelmed, and this is to all of the students and young people out there, rather than being overwhelmed, wondering what you can do, we want you to come away from this series knowing that anything you do, any small thing, matters and makes a difference. And you've seen from our Changemakers that there really is no limit to the difference that you can make. So you only need, a powerful mind, a caring heart, a little bit of imagination, and some help from your friends. And although our Changemakers summer series has come to a close, we really want our audience to continue to check in with Environmental Scouts for new videos, new calls to action, new curriculum, and hopefully some new friends. So Elly and Ella and Amy and Brooke, before I say goodbye to everybody, I would just like to give all of you for the last word. Tell people once again where to find you, what you're working on, what you're excited about, and what we can expect from you next.
Okay, we'll go faster. You can get in touch with us on our website, which is kidsagainstplastic.co.uk, and also our email address is just hello@kidsagainstplastic.co.uk. So please feel free to get in touch. We're also on social media with @kidsagainstplastic on most social media platforms. And also, if you wanted to get involved with our new initiatives on especially youth empowerment, so if you're not passionate about plastic, that's absolutely fine. We would love to have you involved with the youth empowerment scheme as well. So our website for that is the-yes.co.uk. So please feel free to get in touch as well through that.
Yeah, from my side, you can get in touch with me on Instagram, Elly Savatia. And also, I would really recommend you to join the vibrant youth in Heirs to Our Oceans through their Instagram page, Heirs to Our Oceans, and through the website h2oo.org. Yeah, let's keep changing the world together.
Thank you so much. A final thank you to all of my new friends. I'm going to name them all right now. These are my new friends I've met over the past few weeks. Piper Wood, Jordan Radnati, Shea Bastida, Joseph Wilkanowski, Teresa Sebastian, Allison Walaczewski, Jeremy Goss, Jen Tinsman, Mackenzie Feldman, Eliza McHugh, Lori Marino, every one of our Heirs to Our Oceans youth leaders, Latifa Rita, Sarah Dakota, Seth Dominion, of course, Elly Savatia, and Ella and Amy Meek. And of course, my good friend, Brooke Thorman. Brooke, we have school on Monday, don't we?
Yeah. I have some final words.
All right, girl.
Like Amy and Ella said, it's really important to find your passion. Youth voices are so important. We are 20% of the population, but 100% the future. And it's just good to know it's a bonus when your passion is doing good. And I'm done. I'm just so... This is like a great talk. I learned so much over these past weeks, and I owe it all to the people that were in these talks. Thank you, Amy and Ella, and thank you, Elly.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. And I'm going to take a play from Elly's playbook, and we're going to give snaps to Brooke. How's that? Good? All right. Thanks, Environmental Scouts. We'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.